Arming London's streets, hundreds more officers are to patrol to combat terrorism. Anti-terror chiefs say the extra police marksmen will reassure the public and deter potential attackers.
Over the last few days we've seen attacks in Germany, France, Belgium. It'd be really silly to believe it could never happen here. We can't give a 100% guarantee to stop it.
Also tonight, energy bills are capped for Britain's poorest, but the regulators criticised for simply urging the rest to switch.
Guilty of fleecing the bereaved, the funeral director who stole thousands in donations intended for charity.
And a mother's hunch and a phone call that netted this Monmouthshire family lottery millions.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Alistair Stewart.
Good evening. An extra 600 heavily armed police will patrol London's busiest tourist attractions after the recent terror attacks in Belgium, France and Germany. The move is designed to reassure the public and deter potential attackers.
The Met Commissioner, Sir Burden Hogan-Howe, said while there was no suggestion of an imminent attack, it would be foolish to ignore what had happened in Europe. But as Richard Pallet reports, some anti-terror specialists say it's intelligence, not armed patrols, that usually thwart attacks.
The chance of a terrorist attack here in the UK remains highly likely. And these are the new wave of armed officers who will try to repel it, carrying sniper rifles, submachine guns, handguns, all on motorbikes, the most visible and rapid response unit yet.
We've seen what's happened in Western Europe. The threat level is higher. Over the last few days we've seen attacks in Germany, France, Belgium. It'd be really silly to believe it could never happen here. We can't give a 100% guarantee to stop it.
It is London where they will be based. It is London that remains the most high-profile target.
In an instant of an attack, we could expect chaos on the streets. What this gives us is a tried and tested and genuine method of fast response to anywhere across central London and further.
There are also 1,500 additional armed officers being trained across the country, a reflection that anywhere could be hit, but it will take 2 years at least before they're operational. An increased security presence in London is already being seen. Nationwide, other forces are expected to follow. But armed officers on the streets, as seen during recent events in France and Germany, are often powerless to prevent an atrocity. They can merely react. Unlike in Britain, most French officers do carry arms, but even so, they couldn't stop the lorry attack in Nice. There was inadequate policing on the day, but also no identification of the plot in advance. And a former head of national counter-terrorism here warns it is intelligence, not extra armed patrols, that remains key to keeping us safe.
The best option for us is to make sure our communities are willing to report suspicious behaviour, are willing to actually tell us about those people that are becoming radicalised, because once it gets into the point of police officers with firearms, it's too late really, we're going to have a disaster. It's just how many casualties we suffer.
Despite the apparent show of strength today, including this on the River Thames, police numbers are not rising. It is merely a reshuffle of existing resources, an attempt not to alarm but to reassure and to, most importantly, be ready as best they can. Richard Pallow, ITV News, Central London.
OK, well, our national editor Allegra Stratton is here. It's a simple question, really, isn't it? Are we safer both inside and outside London tonight?
Well, the Met Police Chief did say at the weekend that a likely terror attack is a question of when, not if. So these are really unsafe times. But given that, anything that gets the police officers to the scene more quickly, you saw there on speedboats through London or on motorbikes through London, is something that will help to reduce the loss of life if there were to be an attack. But there are questions tonight. The first of which is how quickly these women and men come on stream, how quickly they get trained, and also a lot of the resources are going to London, and there's questions about quite how many resources are going to other parts of the country.
All right, Allegra, thank you.
The energy regulator Ofgem has been criticised for not doing enough to protect millions of customers who are paying too much for gas and electricity. It has capped bills for the 4 million people on prepaid meters, but, as our business editor Joel Hill reports, merely encouraging other customers to switch from expensive standard variable rates is being seen by many as a missed opportunity.
Danny Coakley is one of 4 million people in Britain who pay for their energy in advance. He also pays more than he should. Ofgem is capping the amount companies can charge customers with prepayment meters, a move designed to end the exploitation of the vulnerable and the least likely to switch.
With the prices so high and with you having to use so much gas and electric just to stay warm when it is really cold in the winter, there has been times you just had to make the difference, had to make the choice between heating or eating, and obviously you choose to eat. So it means you're pretty cold, but you don't really have a choice.
The price cap on prepayment meters will be introduced next April and should save the average household £75 a year. The regulator will also force companies to share customer data more generally, in the hope they will attempt to steal business from each other with cheaper deals. And Ofgem will continue its campaign to encourage people to switch energy supplier. Hundreds of pounds can be saved if you move. It's been advertised repeatedly, and yet 2/3 of households don't. Ofgem wants to empower customers. Critics say it should get tougher with the big six energy suppliers.
I do think they've got off lightly. I think they're sitting back and pretty happy about the remedies. I think they invested a lot in the process to make sure the outcomes are what they wanted. And in our view, the CMA did not go nearly far enough.
The next Labour government will freeze gas and electricity prices.
3 years ago, Ed Miliband accused the big six energy companies of ripping off their customers. He pledged a Labour government would give the regulator the power to cut bills. Ofgem's boss told me it's not a power he needs.
I think these reforms will make the energy market much more competitive, and I think that will fix the problem.
You believe that people act rationally, that they search out the cheapest deals. Often people don't, and you are failing to protect those people.
We are protecting the vulnerable and empowering the rest.
British Gas, EDF, npower, Scottish Power, SSE, E.ON, they all insist they want to save you money. But if you're serious about those savings, switch.
Mr. Nolan of Ofgem called them reforms. Are they really bad news for the energy companies?
Well, on the face of it, they should be. The CMA believes we pay almost £1.5 billion a year over the odds for our gas and electricity. So if these reforms are going to prove effective, then you'd expect the energy companies to make less money. But look what's happened in the city. The share prices of some of those companies have barely moved in response to this, raising the prospect that they don't think it's going to damage profitability. But look at also what's happened more recently. Last week, British Gas told us that it had lost 400,000 customers. They defected in the last 6 months looking for cheaper deals. Last summer, we saw npower fire its chief executive because of poor performance. There was a sense that this company's commercial profitability was being undermined by its failure to deliver for customers. So Ofgem believes people power will keep companies honest. And there are small signs that it is beginning to work.
Joel, thank you.
24 Britons were on board a plane that crash-landed at the world's busiest airport before bursting into flames. One firefighter died tackling the blaze, but remarkably, all 300 passengers and crew escaped safely from the Emirates flight at Dubai International. It is reported that the plane, which had arrived from India, had a problem with its landing gear.
A judge here has ruled that 21-year-old Amina Al-Jeffrey from Swansea must be allowed to return to Britain. She claims she's being kept locked up in Saudi Arabia by her father. The court ordered him to give his daughter her passports and pay her airfare.
And 9 children were treated for minor injuries when an inflatable slide they were playing on blew over at a carnival in Dorset this afternoon. 4 of them were taken to hospital. Now, deep divisions within UKIP were revealed today when the favourite to replace Nigel Farage as leader was excluded from the contest. Stephen Woolfe immediately branded the ruling committee as not fit for purpose, and 3 members resigned. Well, let's go to Westminster. Our political correspondent Libby Vina is there. Libby, how bad is this for the party?
Well, I think it's pretty bad. They may have changed the course of history in the sense that they helped steer Britain out of the European Union, but as a party, they now seem determined to be heading back into political obscurity. The two most charismatic candidates for the leadership have now been barred from taking part. One is Susan Evans, the other is Stephen Wolfe, who was told that he got his application in too late. He's said to be extremely disappointed by that, but one man who did get onto the ballot paper said he only had himself to blame.
I always think it's odd to describe a candidate as being the most popular candidate. That's what you have an election to determine, and of course that is what should happen. And if for whatever reason a candidate is ruled ineligible, you can't say, well, that candidate would have won then, you know.
Well, the front runner now is Diane James, an MEP who almost became an MP at the Eastleigh by-election 3 years ago. She's quite a charismatic figure, but also a controversial one, once praising Vladimir Putin as a strong leader. There are many people who are unhappy with this process, including the leader at the moment, Nigel Farage.
OK, Libby Vina at Westminster, thank you.
A funeral director who stole thousands of pounds from grieving families has been given a suspended prison sentence. Alison Popple asked the bereaved to make charitable donations in memory of their loved ones, but kept the money for herself. As Duncan Golestani reports, one family who were deceived said tonight she should have been jailed.
Families entrusted Alison Popple with not only the funeral arrangements for their loved ones, but also the donations they wanted to make in their memories. Popple betrayed that trust and instead kept donations worth £14,000 to help with her own money problems. She also failed to pass on cheques to many charities, including Help for Heroes and local hospices. Popple arranged funerals for Pauline Redmond's brother and later her sister-in-law. The donations in their names were never passed on to the hospices she wanted to thank.
Anger that such a woman, intelligent woman in that position, in a position of trust, should do such a thing when people are at their most vulnerable.
Pauline, like many other families, received fake thank you letters from Popple, pretending to be from the charities. She even arranged the funeral of a relative and then deceived family members.
I think she should have got a custodial sentence. I know my husband's money was peanuts compared to these big charities, and I feel sorry for all the victims, but it makes me feel worse because knowing she'd done it to family.
Popple has been ordered to pay money back to the affected charities.
I'm really sorry for what has happened.
The judge telling her she must bear the guilt and shame of what she has done for the rest of her life. Duncan Golestani, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. To floss or not to floss? A top dentist claims it could be a waste of time.
And £61 million richer, the family who bought a Euro Millions ticket to celebrate life-saving surgery.
I just felt like I cheated death in a way. I just feel so lucky.
Those stories and more after this very short break. Welcome back. Over the past 2 weeks, 7 hospitals in Syria have been bombed or shelled during the increasingly savage civil war. Tonight, ITV News has a rare and disturbing insight into the terrible conditions inside another hospital, where doctors and nurses work in fear that they could be next in the firing line. Our international affairs editor, Raghi Omar, reports on 24 hours of a hospital on the front line.
As the war around Aleppo continues, this is a rare glimpse inside one of the few hospitals close to the besieged parts of the city which has not been hit. Tox, a British aid volunteer, has given ITV News a vivid portrait of the horror and bravery endured by people and doctors here.
You're going to get to see what it's like to be in a real working hospital here in Syria, what some of these heroes that we call doctors actually go through. The majority of the casualties are women and children.
Shifa is just 1 year old. The windows of her home were blown in by a bomb blast, and she was cut as she crawled across the glass.
Okay, so it's boiling hot right now. We've just seen a little girl being brought in. Thankfully, another small injury, but it's always distressing to see children.
This young boy, Mahmoud, is lucky to be alive. An airstrike close to his home caused the ceiling to collapse on him. Again and again, Tox describes serious injuries that can't be treated because of a lack of supplies and equipment. He's been brought in with what could be a serious head injury, yet there is no scanning equipment, only the most basic X-ray, with the X-ray plate having to be held up by Mahmoud's father.
That is really, really heartbreaking, because how can you tell the extent of the injury?
Tox also shows a former NHS ambulance donated by a British charity.
And for all of those people that say that these ambulances are not being put to use, this is where they're being used, and we need more because we're losing them every single day.
But the NHS ambulances arrive without critically needed equipment.
When they come from the UK, they're stripped out. They don't have the equipment that we need. This man, he's had a very, very serious operation. He should be on a ventilator right now. He should be having assisted breathing. There should be many pieces of equipment in case he goes into cardiac arrest.
It is physically and emotionally draining work in searing heat, with little or no time to rest. And then suddenly it starts again.
There's been a chlorine attack not far from here.
With reports of another attack using chlorine gas.
So we're just getting ready to evacuate.
But eventually another hospital receives the wounded from the attack, and the evacuation is called off. Another example of the extreme daily crises faced by hospitals in Aleppo and across Syria. Raghi Omar, ITV News.
One of Saddam Hussein's former palaces that was being used by so-called Islamic State has been bombed by the RAF. The Ministry of Defence says the former dictator's palace in Mosul was a headquarters and training base for the extremists.
And police in Zimbabwe have used batons to break up anti-government demonstrations. Street protests are now almost a daily occurrence as frustrations grow over the country's rapidly deteriorating economy.
Now, Lord Coe has spoken for the first time about the doping scandal that's resulted in hundreds of Russian athletes being banned from the Rio Olympics.
The head of Athletics World governing body insisted that anti-doping measures had not been a total failure. They should be judged, he said, on what they achieve by the end of the year, not by what happens over the next few days. He was talking to our sports editor, Steve Scott.
For the International Olympic Committee, Friday's opening ceremony probably can't come quickly enough. This, then, a comforting sight as the torch finally reaches Rio. The Russia doping shambles still dominates discussions here. So what does the IAAF president make of it? Seb Coe's federation banned the Russian team, which included many clean athletes. Has everyone else, then, dodged their responsibilities?
I think it's very easy to say that there is a wholesale failure. There isn't, and actually.
But we're 2 days before the games, and there are athletes who don't.
If I may say so, I think you're asking two very different questions. Yes, it would have been better not to be 2 days away from an opening ceremony, but I don't think that is the same as saying that right across the board, the anti-doping structures we have failed everybody. They haven't.
Do you think sport in general, and I suppose I include you in this as well, has a collective responsibility for the mess we are in at the moment?
We're not going to be judged over the next few days about what we do here. You know, the games will take place, sport will kick in. Our judgment will be what we do collectively between the end of the games and the end of the year.
The sport kicked off this afternoon. Those in the eye of the storm here hope, with the action now underway, the conversation will change. Behind the scenes, the blame game among sports leaders will undoubtedly continue in the coming days, as will the anxiety for Russian athletes here, most of whom, astonishingly, still don't know whether they'll be allowed to compete or not. Steve Scott, ITV News, Rio de Janeiro.
And in the last half hour, it's been announced that Andy Murray will be the flag bearer for Team GB during Friday's opening ceremony. The Wimbledon champion said he was very proud to be selected and will carry the flag in front of the 366 British competitors at the Maracana Stadium.
For years, millions of us have felt guilty for not flossing our teeth, despite dire warnings from dentists about the need to do so. Well, now the NHS is to review its guidance after new research claims there is only weak or very unreliable evidence that it actually does any good at all. Peter Smith has been investigating, so if you don't like going to the dentist, look away now.
Open wide.
If you've been listening to your dentist, you'll brush your teeth twice a day and you'll floss regularly. But the bad news today is you might have been wasting your time and money with the flossing. An American investigation has found there is no proof whatsoever that flossing prevents gum disease or stops cavities.
The new research that's come out is talking about cleaning between teeth and getting bacterial deposits out from between the teeth. We're now recommending interdental brushes, which have been recommended for a while along with the other technique, which is floss, but we're now saying that this is more effective.
But hang on, dental floss companies have made over £1 billion selling us a product that was meant to be beneficial for our health.
You should try Dentec Floss Picks.
Even the NHS officially endorsed the merits of flossing, though that advice is now going to be reviewed across the UK.
How on earth could this advice be so wrong for so long?
Well, I don't think the advice has been wide of the mark. I think for years we've known that interdental brushes are more effective than floss. So for patients that can use the brushes between, that's what we would recommend. But every patient is different, and there's different studies come out all the time.
You're quite happy with it? You've been flossed, you've not been wasting your time?
No, yeah, I'm happy. I don't think I've wasted my time. My gums are quite healthy. So I'd say, no, I've not been cheated.
So this news is not too painful for flossers. They've certainly not been doing themselves any harm. And the message from the British Dental Association tonight is, trust us on the brushing advice. Peter Smith, ITV News, Glasgow.
And finally, Sonia Davis was feeling lucky after a successful operation in Florida to remove a tumour. So she rang her daughters in Wales and urged them to buy some tickets for Friday's Euro Millions jackpot.
And she was right. She was lucky, winning more than £61 million. But as our Wales correspondent, Rupert Evening, reports, it very nearly didn't happen.
61 million divided by 5. That's £12.2 million each. And it's only happened because Mum Sonia was feeling lucky on holiday in Florida, following surgery to remove a tumour that could have killed her. One persuasive phone call home and she and the family are now multi-millionaires.
We had an email ping up on my partner's phone to say, roll over lotto. And we just thought, you know, we're so lucky. Hence my phone call to my daughters, both of them, to make them go and buy the lottery ticket because, you know, life was just looking so good at that moment.
Eventually I thought, well, you know, I've got to do it, and that's when it came into convincing Steve to take me to the garage because his van was blocking the drive, and so yeah, that's what we did.
We haven't slept for 3 days. We're just thinking about, you know, carrying on our life as normal really, but it's not normal, is it? It still isn't real. But I think the main thing for us is, you know, we'll enjoy it eventually and, you know, we can help family and friends, that's what we'll do.
A few home improvements are now planned and they'll keep the day jobs for now. But Courtney intends to clear her student debts.
I'm going to phone up and get that one gone already and then just pay the rest off as it goes, I guess. Yep.
That won't take long. And in case you were wondering, Sonia and her partner Keith flew back from holiday in economy class. Possibly the last time they head to the back of the plane. Rupert Evening, ITV News, Newport.
Dreams. That's it. Tom's here at 10.
But from all of us for now, a very good evening to you.
Bye-bye.